are as close together as they've ever been for 60,000 years. So you want to go out and look at Mars. Well, the New York Daily News got a hold of this story, and so here is their front page. Close up. Mars, nearest to Earth in 60,000 years. Oh my gosh, don't miss that. Oh my God. So here's the problem. No one is asking how much closer. So which way is west from here where I'm standing? Well, we have agreement. That's good. This way is west. Good. Thank you. How come no one else participated in that exercise? So you ready? Closest to Earth in 60,000 years. Okay, ready? I've never been this close to California before. Is there any hope for America? We've been looking for life for a long time. What we try to do is follow the water. All water on Earth. All water on Earth, unless you specifically sterilize it, has life of some kind. Even the Dead Sea has life. It just has microbial life that people who called it the Dead Sea couldn't see because they hadn't invented microscopes yet. So there's no macroscopic fishy life in the Dead Sea. But it's got other kinds of life. Life thrives everywhere we have liquid water. So when we're looking for life in the universe, especially in our backyard, we focus on water. And there's extraordinary evidence for past, a rich history of flowing water on the surface of Mars. This is some crater that we think had water in it, and the edge broke away, and it trickled down and puddled up on the side of this mound. And there's all manner of signatures of water carving features into the Martian landscape. There's no water there now. It's a bit of a mystery. We think it went underground. I mean, it's hiding underground, right? We think it became permafrost. And we have good evidence for that. Check out this crater. We have a Mars orbiter that photographs the surface of Mars with some regularity. And what happened was, this is a crater that was freshly made. Freshly made. And if the water is beneath the surface, the crater is going to reveal that fact. And so what we think happened here is that the asteroid hit. It exposed an entire layer of water, melted the water because of the impact energy. Then that water froze, leaving you this surface. On Mars, the frozen water will sublime and dissipate over weeks. This is a couple of months later. It's the same crater. And so now the water is disappearing. So this is sort of more kinds of evidence that tells us that there's water on Mars. But the best evidence of all
so wrong.
That's water on Mars. We got that. Isn't it cool we have a candy bar that's like shares a name with a planet and another one that shares a name with a galaxy? That's awesome. If you can't go there, at least you can eat them, I think is the... I'm not using it as a substitute for NASA's ambitions. It's just still an interesting observation. Not only can you drink water if it's on Mars, you can use it as rocket fuel. Not widely known as it should have been, that the space shuttle, the main orange fuel tank, it has two fuel tanks inside of it. One of those two fuel tanks is twice the size of the other. And the one that's twice the size contains hydrogen, and the one that's half the size contains oxygen. Twice as much hydrogen as oxygen. If you bring those two together, they make water. And as they make water, they release a huge amount of energy. And we combine them in the right proportion. Because what's the chemical symbol for water? H2O. So we got the tanks ready to do this. You bring them together, it is highly exothermic. Exothermic, and you get this. So most of the byproduct of the main engine exhaust is water. So if you go to Mars and find water, in principle you can set up a factory to separate the hydrogen and oxygen and use that later on for rocket fuel, as well as drink some. Now back in the 70s, we had some low-resolution images of Mars. This was one that came back and triggered a lot of interest. What is it? You guys see a face? Yeah. What do we do about that? Well, so the Mars fanatics said there's life on Mars, there's a face, this is one of their monuments. But if you pause and think about it, this is another planet. Most life on Earth does not have a face. Life with whom we share DNA. We have DNA in common. We have DNA in common with yeast cells. Yeast doesn't have a face. With worms. Worms don't have faces. With oak trees don't have faces. With jellyfish don't have faces. So what they're trying to tell us is that there's life on another planet that has a simian face, like a human face. Well, that's wishful thinking. By the way, if you can't, let me just zoom in on that in case you're missing it. There you go. You got it? All right. So, if that's really a face, it should show up as a face under higher resolution. This is actually a pretty low resolution image. If we go back with better cameras and take the picture, it should still look like a face, because the only thing that looks like a face from any sun angle and in any direction is a what? A face. Okay? If it's not a face, there's going to be an angle where, what is that? Okay? So we did go back. We did go back. Here's that same region with higher resolution. Right there. Not a face. Okay? So now the people who want to believe, even when evidence argues against them, say, oh, the aliens noticed we were looking at them and they covered it up with dust. Okay. Aliens knew we were spying on them. What do you want me to do about that? All right. Here's that same region in another sun angle, right there. Not a face. Now, people have we have a tendency to see faces in all kinds of things. Where you're sitting out on the lawn and you look up at the clouds and you see Abe Lincoln in the clouds. He's not really there, right? It just kind of looks like him because in our brain, the human brain, has pattern recognition software built in. And you'll recognize stuff even if it's not there. You'll take fragments of information and create a more detailed version of it in your mind. It's a well-known phenomenon, and it's traceable to basically to the Serengeti, where it's better to think you see a tiger, or in that case a lion, in the brush and escape, than to not see a lion, have it be a lion, and get eaten. Because if you get eaten by a lion, your genes are not passed on. So I think I see a lion. Whether it is a lion or it is not, I live to see another day. So we have extraordinary pattern recognition software in our head that some embarrassing percentage of the time gives us false pattern recognition. And that's what gets us into so much trouble, when we think we saw something when in fact we didn't. So, by the way, if we were a lobster, we could probably find lobster form, my friend Ernie, Ernie the lobster. Well, if we were jellyfish, we find jellyfish formations and say that there's an intelligent species of jellyfish on Mars. You can look for other shapes. How about the Valentine crater, right? That means something to our culture because we have Valentines. How about the smiley face crater? But if there's life on Mars, I think it'll look like this. Okay, that's what I think. Right. I used to joke that this was a classified photo from NASA. And I smuggled it out of headquarters, and they were not allowed. The very first picture taken by the Curiosity rover. It's interesting. If in fact there's life on other planets, it poses, in theological circles, it poses some deep challenges, because much of sort of Western monotheistic theology asserts that, in particular, Jesus is a savior. He's a savior for all mankind. Well, suppose there's a more intelligent species on another planet. Is Jesus a savior for that species? This is like an academic, theologic issue now that we're in the search for life. And there was in fact an article on this in a magazine called 21C. And so they're trying to make an alien Jesus, so they make him green. Now why aliens are green? I don't get that. I don't fully understand why we're making green aliens. But this slightly comical cover actually is addressing a serious theological issue. Whether that, how do you deal with that? Or maybe you don't. Or you just ignore it, give up on the question. I want to remind you all of a couple of things. First, that Earth wants to kill you.
Wants to kill you.
Did you know that? Are you one of those, oh, Earth is a haven for life. Oh, Earth, no, this will kill you. So will that, and 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 that. If you add up the number of dead people from Earth trying to kill us, it's in the millions. You realize that more than 95% of all species that ever lived on Earth are now extinct? Extinct. Now, okay, so suppose you survive all of that. Well, the universe wants to kill you too, all right? So, you've been to Arizona. Arizona's famous for its holes in the ground. My favorite of the two holes is this one. What's the other hole? You don't sound very confident of that answer. Let's rewind and try again. Arizona's famous for two holes in the ground. This is one of them. And the other one is? Thank you. Grand Canyon. So typically when you visit these places, you can do both of these in one trip. They're like 4 hours apart, but you're not really near anything else. So you do it in one vacation trip. You visit the Grand Canyon, you visit this crater. So when I first did that, I looked at the Grand Canyon. It's grand. You know, I got that. I understand you. All right? Took 70 million years to make it. Okay, I got you. So then I went to Meteor Crater. It's called Meteor Crater, made by a meteor. And you look over the rim, and you realize it's nearly a mile across. You can bury a 60-story building in the center of it. And this was made in 10 seconds. I'm going with Meteor Crater on this, all right? Grand Canyon loses to Meteor Crater if I'm picking my holes in the ground. By the way, in my field, we call it like we see it. It's a crater made by a meteor. Meteor crater. There are spots on the sun. Sunspots. Jupiter has a red spot. It's called Jupiter's red spot. This is how we roll as astrophysicists. You ever talk to biologists about their work, or chemists, especially geologists? I once picked up a rock, it was pretty. I said, look at this pretty rock. That's orthoclase feldspar. I don't even want it anymore. Biologists? What's the most important molecule in life? It's DNA. Oh, you had to abbreviate it, didn't you? Why? Because it has 9 syllables. Deoxyribonucleic acid. What do we call the beginning of space-time and everything? Big Bang. I'm just saying. We win that contest.
So wrong.
And our words are so attractive, they're used for other things. They name cars after our stuff. Who are old timers? Remember the Galaxy 500? Remember? There's the last of the land yachts, the Galaxy 500. There's the Chevy Nova, but I don't think the engineers knew that that's a star that just exploded. You know, I don't think nobody told them that. But we have Novas, and you know, and there's the Geoprism. There's a lot of words that derive from our field. We even have food. We have the Mars bar, the Milky Way bar, Moonglow bath beats, Celestial Seasonings tea. There's no deoxyribonucleic acid tea. Just saying. Well, an asteroid made this. An asteroid approximately the size of this room made that hole in the ground. And sometimes there's more than one. Here's what's called an asteroid, a meteorite chain, where there's a whole train of meteors coming in. And then they hit one right after another. Here's what's interesting about this image. They would hit the exact same spot because they're moving through space, one right behind the other. But this moon, I think it's one of the moons of Jupiter, this moon was rotating while that was happening. And so each successive meteor is a little bit behind on the moon's surface, on the satellite's surface. And so these crater chains are because of the rotation of the orb, not because they're actually spread out from the point of where they would first hit. So these things are bad, and we know this. One of these hit 65 million years ago, rendered here by the artist Don Davis for NASA. 65 million years ago, a rock the size of Mount Everest slammed into Earth, about 6 miles across. So this is a bad day for the dinosaurs, right? Now, I would show this to a high school class. Now, at any time you're in high school, and sometimes even in college, who sits in the front row? Who sits in the front row? No, I know you're raising your hand. But I know that you are in the front row. I figured that out. Okay. What kind of people sit in the front row in high school? The nerds sit in the front row. The smart ones sit in the front row. And the back row is all the kids who'd rather be somewhere else. So I show this in a high school, and someone in the front row raised their hand and said, "Oh, Dr. Tyson, is that an actual photograph?" Yes, the pterodactyl had a digital camera, and the chip, we got the chip from the fossil, and we put it in the computer. The photos are beautiful, high resolution. There's an asteroid headed our way. It's called Apophis, named for the Egyptian god of darkness and evil. Apophis, discovered December 2004 on a trajectory that would intersect Earth. It would have a close approach in April 2029. So close that it will dip below our Earth's orbiting communication satellites. Now that's our space. That's if you come between us and our DirecTV, that's fighting words, I think. You don't do that, okay? No, you don't. No, you didn't. So, by the way, it was only named Apophis once we learned that its orbit crosses the orbit of the Earth. It's on a collision. Now, by the way, you can cross our orbit when we're not there. You won't hit each other then. Just the same way you can cross the street, the same street that trucks go on. You're only hit by the truck if you cross at the same time that the truck is there. So, you can run the numbers and find out, will Apophis ever hit Earth? It can hit Earth. Depending on its exact trajectory, in 2029, on April 13th, which is a Friday, by the way, just for disclosure purposes, I must tell you. Friday the 13th in April 2029, Apophis gives us a buzz cut. So, depending on what that actual trajectory is, it might come around and hit us 7 years later. Once again on April 13th, but now 2036. That would be a Thursday, April 13th, by the way. So, we're monitoring Apophis carefully. It is the size of the Rose Bowl. We have plans on deflecting it. By the way, there are two kinds of people out there. The ones who like blow it out of the sky. You know, those are like, let's blow the sucker around the sky. Here's my chewing tobacco. Right. Let's get this bogey. You know those people, right? We know they exist, even if you don't know them personally. Those kind of folks don't tend to come from Ohio, right? Other states produce these folks. And so one of the plans is, instead of blowing it up, because in America we're really good at blowing stuff. There's nothing in this. I don't even like giving book talks. It's why I write the books, so I don't have to keep talking about them. So you just read the book and I can stay home. So if I'm here in the flesh, I'll talk about things that are not readily available to you on a wiki page. There's one thing I just want to highlight because it just came out. It's the inexplicable universe, unsolved. This is 6 lectures that I gave that are on the frontier of our ignorance in the universe. Normally you would buy a book or subscribe to a lecture series and you learn what we know. And I thought, we are dumb, stupid, ignorant about some really cool things in the universe, and I should make a whole video series of that. So it's kind of fun, so I stand and I say, we don't know anything about that. We don't know anything about that either, right? And then, so just if you like mysteries, that works. So remember, it's an astrophysicist reads a newspaper. So what happened a week ago? A week ago we had the harvest moon. You remember that? It was in all the news. Everybody was talking about it. I don't know if it was clear that night here. I didn't check the weather. And what is the harvest moon? It's the full moon that falls nearest the autumn equinox. And this year that was September 22nd, the autumn equinox. And so we had the full moon on September 19th, just 3 days before, called the harvest moon. For obvious reasons, this is in the northern hemisphere, the time of year where you would harvest your crops, the grape harvest, other harvests as well. So, all right, so people wanted to make a big deal of this. And there's like, oh, the harvest moon is so beautiful, oh, it's different colors, and it spins in the sky. People making stuff up about the harvest moon. None of it is true. It's bigger. No, it's not. No. It's not bigger, small. It's not. It's a moon. It's a full moon. Get over it, all right? And it's one of, every full moon of the year has a name. It's just that this one, people write songs about it. But just because you write a song about a cosmic event doesn't mean the cosmic event is special. The harvest moon, here's some other moons. Snow moon, wolf moon, hunger moon, you can see all this. My favorite moon here occurs in June. The June full moon, it crosses the sky at the lowest angle of any other full moon of the year. So low that it actually has to come through some of the dust and other crud that is suspended in our atmosphere. And it has an effect on the moon such as what goes on at a sunset. The white sun in the middle of the sky takes on a sort of a yellowy amber glow and then deep red, very low on the horizon. So here's the full moon, not getting very high in the sky, and it retains a kind of an amber color. The full moon in June thus got the name the honey moon. And now we use that to not even describe a moon, but just a vacation you take, which is really wet. Now, here's my issue with the harvest moon. The press, any journalism majors here? Right there on the wall there? Anybody? How many other you can raise your hand. That's fine. Okay, there are 3 of you. All right. And the rest of you are lying. So, you journalists will be the brunt of many a comment this evening. Not you particular, but your species, okay? So, the journalist wants to write about the harvest moon, about which nothing is special. So here they go. So here's right? Harvest moon, how to see the full moon on what? Do you really need help finding the full moon? Also, you guys don't have any flowers at this side of the stage. Okay, is this better? Yeah. This is what I'm thinking about you over here. Yeah. All right. So, Skywatchers, get ready for a special sight tonight. There's nothing special about the harvest moon. By the way, if you are a farmer and you don't harvest all your crops in daylight, the full moon, the harvest moon, like any full moon, rises at sunset. So you can continue harvesting your crops into the night. So it's useful for that, perhaps, because we have so many farmers today. Yes. Something else that's in the news. There's a comet that everybody's been talking about, Comet Ison. It was discovered by the International Scientific Optical Network. A lot of that is based in Russia. And there's a Bulgarian fellow and a Russian fellow who co-discovered the comet. And you see their names, and that's why we call it Comet Ison, right? So it's going to be a close approach to Earth on December 26th this year. So it's going to be a Christmas comet, and it's all going to be beautiful, and everybody. And it's a first-time comet, which means if you're sort of math fluent there, it has an eccentricity equal to basically 1, which is a parabola. We think it has never really come around the sun before, so it's the first dose of sunlight. It's the first time it's ever getting heated, the first time it will begin to evaporate into space to make a tail. And anytime you have comets like that, the material has not been loosened up enough to really make the cometary plumes that we come to know and want in our comets. And so the early stories about this comet was that it would be beautiful and big, be around for Christmas, and it'd be the comet of your lifetime. So I have a very recent photo of the comet, taken a month ago. So here we go. So that's the comet, okay? Inside the rectangle. You got that? Okay? All right, we done with this now? You got that? All right, now comets are, I've seen people behave weirdly. Occasionally comets can strike, but not this one. All right? When they can strike, and they can be bad when they strike. Like, you don't want to be on Earth when they strike. Right? You should go somewhere else. Like Pluto. Then you're fine. So, Pluto. It was an ugly scene. January 21st, 2001. A New York Times reporter had just published an article about my place back in New York, a newly opened exhibit on the universe, where we noticed that we were discovering, my planetary brethren, were discovering other objects in orbit around the sun, around where Pluto is orbiting the sun. And these objects were kind of icy, like Pluto, and kind of tipped orbit, cockamamie orbit, like Pluto. And they had peculiar features all in common with Pluto. And so we took Pluto and said, let's not think of it as a ninth planet. Let's think of it as another one of these new family of objects just discovered in the outer solar system. known as the Kuiper Belt of comets. So we did this. We did this. All right, let's see. So January 21st, 2001, what should be headlines that day? Just think back. The inauguration, thank you, of President Bush, George W. Plus, they're still counting the dimpled Chads at this time. This is all right. So, George W. Bush got inaugurated the day before. So, this day's newspaper would cover that day's news. You got it? Okay, so, let's take a look at page 1 of the New York Times. Here we go. Page 1, I'll read it to you. Okay, it says, on the first day, Bush settles into a refitted Oval Office. So there he goes. 27 new cardinals, all right, so Catholic news down here, okay. New plants in California, racing time. And then right here, what is this? What? Wait, let's zoom in. We'll zoom in. Pluto not a planet, only in New York. As she walked past the display of photos of planets at the Rose Center for Earth and Space, Pamela Curtis of Atlanta scrunched her brow, perplexed. There didn't seem to be enough planets. She started counting on her fingers, trying to remember the mnemonic her son had learned in the years before. My very educated mother just served us 9 pizzas. Mercury, Venus, Earth, Mars, Jupiter, Saturn, Uranus, Neptune. I had to go through the whole thing to figure out which one was missing. Pluto. Pluto was not there. This is on page 1 of the New York Times. Thus began... I'm trying to be like diplomatic here. We're not that confrontational about it, said Dr. Tyson, director of the museum. You actually have to pay attention to make note of this. We weren't sticking it to Pluto in the front door. Do you know a Brit named Pluto? An 11-year-old girl from England named Pluto. She had just learned about Roman gods. You know, an American could have never named Pluto Pluto. America could not have done it, because in the 1920s, Pluto was discovered in 1930. In the 1920s, there was a mineral laxative called Pluto water, recommended by doctors everywhere. America's laxative. When nature won't, Pluto will, all right? Well, I became public enemy, and I have a file cabinet drawer worth of hate mail from 3rd graders. It's one of them. Okay? This girl might have been in 4th grade, but same damn difference. Here you go. This begins, you can't see the top line. It says, Dear Scientist. That's what it says. What do you call Pluto if it's not a planet anymore? If you make it a planet again, all the science books will be right. Do people live on Pluto? If they are, then the people who live there, they won't exist. I haven't quite figured out that once you name something, if it's small, doesn't mean it doesn't have to be a planet anymore. Some people like Pluto. If it doesn't exist, then they don't have a favorite planet. Please write back, but not in cursive, because I can't read it in cursive. This is my favorite. And everybody was having fun with this, including comics, comedian, cartoon illustrators. This one is simultaneously hilarious and a little bit sad. I look at these shoes, it's got like those old man shoes, Face. Are any Pluto lovers out here, just so I know? Who is still distraught? But no, just raise your hand. Let me just see how many are. Okay, there are 5 of you. Okay. So we're winning this one, everyone else. So just so you know, the solar system has 6 moons bigger than Pluto. Nobody told you that, did they? Oh, Pluto lovers out there. Pluto is more than half made of ice. So that if you brought Pluto to where Earth is right now, at this distance from the sun, the heat from the sun would evaporate the ice and it would grow a tail. That's no kind of behavior for a planet. Planets don't have tails. If you made of ice and you got a tail, well, you got a word for you. We call you a comet. So Pluto is just an awesome-sized comet. So we reclassified it with the other icy bodies in the outer solar system. And I think it's happier there. Really. Because it's with family. Plus, it's one of the biggest icy bodies in the outer solar system. Oh, by the way, I learned that if you're speaking to kindergarten children, you can't refer to icy bodies in the outer solar system because they think they're actual dead bodies. All the children. It's like, what's the matter? So let me just confirm Pluto is still not a planet. Okay? And just get over it, all right? That's all. Just saying. Did you know that in November last year, planet Krypton was found? Did you know this? Who did not know this? Raise your hand. Most of you didn't know. Krypton was found in the night sky. Krypton. Krypton. Tell you where it is. Okay, it's planet Krypton. It's in the constellation Corvus, the Crow, which is visible primarily from the southern hemisphere, 27 light years away. It's orbiting the star LHS 2520. It's a red dwarf. LHS stands for Leuchten Half-Second Catalog, if you want to be astro-fluent. Right a section, this is its coordinates on the sky. And so that's Krypton. So how do I know that we found Krypton? Well, that star, LHS 2520, is right there in this photo. So Krypton would be orbiting that star. Now, how do I know? Because I found Krypton. There it is. Okay. So that's why. I don't want to brag or anything, but me and Superman are like this now, okay? I don't want to brag, but... plus I learned, of course, Superman was invented in Cleveland, I would learn. Totally cool. But Metropolis is not Cleveland. Just in case there was any issues there, I just want to say. So me, Superman and I are tight, because here we are. Yeah. Superman visited me at the Hayden Planetarium, and he didn't have telescopes. For all his powerful vision, he couldn't quite see that far in that kind of detail. So I amassed together all the computers of the world, all the telescopes of the world, made one sort of coherent image of that spot on the sky so that he could see Krypton get destroyed. So it was a little bit sad. Remember, Superman was launched Moses style in a basket as an infant, and he arrives on Earth as an infant. So he must have traveled through a wormhole or something where time does not delay for him as it would for anybody else. So then I say, well, I spoke to the folks and I said, well, how old is Superman? He said he's eternally in his late 20s, right? No matter when they draw him, he's in his late 20s. So I can find you a star that's 20 light years away, 27 light years away. Let's make that. They said, sure. And I said, we have one in Corvus, the Crow. And he said, that's good. I said, why? He said, because Smallville High, their mascot was a crow. So what happens is I get all the data from all the world's telescopes, and it's overloading the computer. So we really needed a supercomputer, and Superman says, no, that's not necessary. No, one of my staff members says, you don't need a supercomputer when you have Superman. And so Superman stares down at the computer like this, and he brain energies the computer, and then he actually sees the image that we are capturing and watches Krypton get destroyed. So it's actually it's a huggable moment. You know, Superman, it ends with his head down, you just want to hug him, you know. It's a sad moment. He knew his home planet was destroyed, but this confirmed it by the universe. And so there it was. Let's get on to non-fantasy news items. So we've got a rover, Mars Curiosity. This thing is like the size of an SUV, and it was launched to Mars, landed there, Rube Goldbergian-like. It was like there was a drogue chute, and then there were retro rockets, and then there's a hoist, or joist, whatever you call these things. It's lowered down to, and then it cuts the cable, and then it lands, and then it's an SUV on Mars. And there's an engineering masterpiece. Not only how the thing works, but how they landed it there. And we will talk more about Curiosity a little later. I just wanted to say that it's still at it. It's still doing its job. It's a roving geologist. Actually, it's probably 4 geologists worth of expertise, all contained within high-precision scientific instruments. And so we're on Mars right now. More on that in a bit. Well, so we had the harvest moon. There's another kind of moon out there that gets a lot of press undeservedly. It's called the supermoon. You ever hear of the supermoon? You ever hear of that? Okay, supermoon. Supermoon, you ready? Supermoon rises, biggest full moon in 18 years, occurs Saturday night. The biggest full moon. Let's see how big that full moon actually was, okay? It took place in June. Let's compare the May full moon to the June supermoon. There they go. Get that? Supermoon. So what happens is, there's something in our emotions where if someone says this is the biggest ever, no one thinks to ask, how much bigger is it? Because it could be the biggest ever, but then not much bigger, and why are we wasting each other's time? So the supermoon is one such object. And someone from NASA took this photo of the supermoon rising, earlier supermoon from 2012, rising over the Lincoln Memorial. Ooh, look how big this is. Well, of course, he has a 400 millimeter telephoto lens. If he'd used his iPhone, you wouldn't even be able to see the moon in the photo. Have you ever tried to photograph the moon with your smartphone? Have you ever tried that? Go ahead and do that. Okay, so that looks really big. So I compared the supermoon to an average full moon. Okay? In this image. So here we go. That's the supermoon. That's an average moon. Super, average. Here we go. Okay? Got that? So, I don't mind saying it's the biggest moon, but there's nothing super about it. I'm sorry, I can't get upset. By the way, the supermoon easily fits inside of the field of view of a household straw. Try it on that. Just go to Starbucks, get a straw. Don't even get the big gulp straw or whatever. Just a regular straw. Hold it in its orbit. Every orbit it does this, right? So if a small moon is a 7-inch pizza, then an average moon is a 7.5-inch pizza, and a large moon is an 8-inch pizza. And a supermoon is an 8.00001-inch pizza. If someone handed you an 8-inch pizza compared with a 7-inch pizza, you would not call it super. That's all I'm saying here. It's truth in advertising. That's my issue. People get all bent out of shape about moons. They talk about babies being born, extra babies being born. I don't know what people are thinking. Is the moon yanking the baby out of the womb? So you look through some municipalities and you find out in some locations there's a slightly higher birth rate during full moon than other phases. That's kind of interesting. So, is the moon tugging the baby out? Well, first of all, the full moon does not have more gravity than any other phase of the moon during the month. It's the same gravity. Not only that, something no one else will tell you, except me here now. That's a space-time coordinate, by the way. Here, now. The full moon when full, does not exert a higher tidal force on the moon, on Earth, than it does at any other phase. The tidal force from the moon is the same no matter its phase. So you can't appeal to the tidal force, you can't appeal to its regular gravity, unless you're saying the crescent moon is pulling the baby out, and the half moon is, just as you blame every phase, you can't single out the full moon. Full moon is innocent. So how about where the babies are actually born a little extra? Well, here, so a cycle of the full moon is 29 and a half days. One cycle of the full moon. Actually, that's the cycle of any phase of the moon, but we're anchoring it to the full moon right now. 29 and a half days. The female human gestation period is not the number the doctor gives you. All right? The doctor analyzes you, speaking to the women of the audience at this moment, the women who have been pregnant and came to term. Raise your hand if you're one of those women. Thank you. Okay? They're all over here. What happened over here? Get busy, all right, so we can include you in the conversation, right? So the doctor gives you a number of days, like 270-something days or something. What they're doing there is timing the birth, the expected date, from the date of your last missed period. That's how they're calculating. But that's not when you got pregnant. You got pregnant like in the middle of your period. Okay? That's when that happened. So if you can add those extra days, the human gestation period is 295 days. What is 29.5 times 10? 295 days. So, if you gave birth during a full moon, it just meant you got pregnant during a full moon. I'm just saying. Analyze the data. I can't help you here. We got lunatics out there. Then there's something called a